Hey, this is William Tincup and Ryan Leary, and you're watching and hopefully listening to the Use Case Podcast. Today we have David on from Talent Neuron, and we're going to be learning all about the use case, business case, for why people choose Talent Neuron. David, how are you doing today?
Great, thank you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Ryan, how you doing?
Oh, I'm fantastic, man. We got David on. We're going to talk Talent Neuron, and we're going to get smart.
Here we go. David, would you do us a favor and introduce yourself?
Sure. David Wilkins. I am our Chief Product and Marketing Officer here at Talent Neuron. Been in the HCM space now for, I guess, sad to say, over 30 years.
No.
Oh,
We don't use years. We don't use years.
He just dated himself. So in 1953, I joined.
After I worked on the atomic bomb.
Yeah. So true story, guys. I was in a board call a couple weeks ago and noted when I started my career and said that I had been in this space about 24 years.
Right.
And then one of our board members, in fact, our chairman of the board, said, "Dave, I think your math is wrong. It's actually like 34 years." That was a disheartening moment, I must say, to lose 10 years like that instantly.
No, I delete my LinkedIn profile only goes back to 20 years.
Okay, good call.
So I deleted everything below 20, and
That's fair.
And in 2025 it'll go to 2005.
Okay,
I'll always only have a rolling 20. I'll always
This guy just never ages.
never ages. Like that. You
it.
know what? I love that you put product and marketing together. How did that, because a lot of companies don't. They product over here, marketing over there, sales over here.
Yeah.
How did y'all agree on putting those two things together?
Yeah, I think, I've kind of bounced around between the two over a lot of my career. So I've run marketing a few times, product a few times, been a chief strategy officer, been a general manager a couple times of like product lines within SaaS. So when we were constructing this, I came in last October to Talent Neuron. Julie, who's the CEO, actually had a real similar background to me where she's been in product, been in marketing, been a head of strategy, and obviously run as a CEO a lot of companies. So she and I both really similarly, I think, see that when you do marketing at the high enough level, then you have to know the market, you have to know competitors, you have to know the needs of your clients, you have to know where the space is going. And if you're doing product at a high enough level, you have to know all that, and you have to know where the product should go and how to shape strategic direction. So at the right level of strategy, they kind of start to overlap a lot in meaningful ways.
Mm-hmm.
And given the space that we're in is a little bit still kind of being built out, it's a little category creation, kind of makes sense to kind of ram it all together and think about it holistically,
I love it because it's not a lot of this, blaming product people aren't saying marketing doesn't get it. Marketing I say, product people, they're crazy.
Now I just look at the mirror and just yell at myself.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
Only if marketing would send me the right people.
Yes.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to jump into product, but before we do that, David, do you find, because the setup, the structure you have here is interesting to me, and I prefer it this way myself. Do you find that when the roles are separated, there is a clash and less things get done?
Yeah, I do think that, and often in scenarios where I've been ahead of marketing but not ahead of product, I've often find myself in a position where I feel like I have a better handle on what we should be doing based on market understanding and the competitive landscape.
Right.
Because you think about the resources that a good marketing leader has access to: analysts, folks like you guys as major influencers in a space, client conversations, events. There's a ton of signal that comes in through marketing. And if you're properly ingesting that signal and get a point of view about what should happen, sometimes you're in some ways more informed even than the product team. And so if you have to then filter all of your ideas into the product team and hope they understand it all, then it can slow things down and create friction points, right? And then similarly on the product side, when I've had product but not marketing, there's often technology constraints and limitations and, things you got to work around that other folks aren't aware of. When you have that whole picture in one view, it allows you to juke and weave in ways that is more flexible, more nimble, more responsive, and yet still achieve the ultimate end game, right?
Who owns customers?
So we have a CRO function. So Catherine Evans on our team runs that, and she owns that whole from an AE, like existing customers as well as new customer segmentation.
Support, everything.
Yeah, and then we have a slightly separate function where we have customer success as well, and those teams work in concert with the account
Perfect.
owners, right?
That's perfect.
So it's a pretty sophisticated model,
Yeah.
but it gives us a pretty good, and we all work obviously very closely together to try to
Oh, yeah.
understand client needs and how things are evolving, et cetera.
So what is Talent Neuron and what problem do we solve?
Yeah. So first, I'm still new enough that I remain in awe a little bit of what this company does and how it does it. I think for those of us who've been in the space a little while, it's kind of a little bit of a wish fulfillment for me in that it's a massive big data, AI, machine learning based company. And what we do is we ingest all kinds of demand signal in the form of job posts on a global basis, supply data about the available people in a given market,
Right.
and then cost data from a variety of sources, including what gets published into job posts. And we're basically gathering all of that kind of information for 40 countries in the world, representing collectively about 90% of the world's GDP, where we know talent demand, talent supply, and talent cost. Things like skills, things like the employee value proposition, things like where are people hiring, what skills are they hiring for in different locations, who's hiring for what talent,
Right.
and all of that enables us to basically take all that raw data and through AI and machine learning, we can distill all that into signal and actually make sense of it in ways that companies can then do things like plan their next location based on available talent today and what that talent's going to look like a few years out. Do things like, if I could hire in Austin or Boston or Bangalore, what's the mix of demand versus supply and what's the cost of it? And where's the most likely place I'm going to be successful in bringing that talent together, right? Maybe I want to understand what my competitors are doing as they're thinking about AI and machine learning skills. What roles are they putting those skills in? Where in the world are they hiring for that stuff? Where should I be looking based on what my competitors are doing? And am I doing things in a way that's inconsistent with market? We can look at the way that skills are being asked for inside of the 1.5 million job posts we get per day across the world. And we can say, hey, these are new skills. These are emerging or growing skills. These skills are core that are asked for all the time for this kind of role. And maybe these skills used to be core, but now they're not being asked for as frequently. So something's changing. The skill's evolving, it's declining, it's becoming assumed that you just have that skill. And so it gives us an ability to then say things like, well, today you're hiring for this kind of person, but the market, when they hire for this same role, they're looking for this. And you're
This
no
is, and this is how
longer
you
keeping
compare.
up with, this is how you compare, right?
Right.
So all of that collectively gives folks like intelligence to know not just what's going on inside my business, but what's going on in my competitor landscape, inside the market, what's evolving, what's changing, what's available, and how can I make better strategic decisions around all of that to basically future-proof or de-risk my strategy going forward.
Two questions here. Take them any way you want. So one is, who are we selling to? Who's the company? What's your target? Your ICP? And then second to that, and you've answered it somewhat here already, but I want to use a different word: trigger. What's the trigger point for that customer, potential customer, to say, all right, I need a solution here. I need to solve this problem. So we know the problem that you solve, but what's that trigger point that you find they normally come to you?
Yeah. So the target demo for us historically has been what I would call the Fortune 2000. So organizations that typically have a multinational footprint of some kind, often multi-regional. Some of our companies that we support are in literally like 110 countries in the world, right? They're everywhere. And they're struggling with, how do I solve for where do I hire? So it's a TA, very strategic, high-level TA challenge, right? So if I can hire in any of 110 locations, what's my best strategy to do wage arbitrage or to look at skill availability, speed of hire, competitiveness, that type of thing, right? Where can I go find pockets of talent that I otherwise don't know exist, right? And discover inequities in the market that I can exploit, either cost or talent availability. And so the other key use case beyond strategic TA is really what I would call workforce planning. I know strategic workforce planning has kind of got like I'm sure it's one of those words that people have talked about for 20 years and no one's figured out.
100%.
But in this case, like a lot of what our clients do squarely fall into that bucket, like location planning or like skills analysis, build versus buy versus bought frameworks, comparing internal capabilities to what the market is looking for to see where my deltas exist, right? So I wouldn't say it's full blown strategic workforce planning, but there's very significant, substantial pieces of it that clients are trying to solve for within the framework. So people analytics teams, folks who are on strategic workforce planning,
Talent
C-level
intelligence.
business
Yeah.
transformation, talent intelligence. It's those kind of things where they're looking for an understanding of markets and the talent in them writ large to support strategic planning and strategic thinking.
Y'all don't
Does that
bump
help
up
a little bit?
against. Yeah, yeah. Y'all don't bump up.
We do. I mean, especially now that they're giving it away.
Yeah.
So, everybody and their brother, is looking for cost savings nowadays, right?
100%.
But yeah, no, there are folks who see
they
that
don't
as
have
an
all-
alternate.
They don't have all three. If I
Yeah,
remember
correct.
right,
Yeah.
they do the supply and demand, but they don't have comp.
Yeah. And the other piece that we often hear from clients is, it's all self-reported, right? So one of the
Right,
things that we
right.
pride ourselves on is, we're getting our data from governmental sources, NGOs, like
Yeah.
trade unions, like census data from various government entities.
Hard
And then we
data.
supplement, hard data. We do supplement that with social data, right? Because
Sure.
why wouldn't you, right, as
Yeah.
a secondary data source? But so
Not a primary.
and then from a demand perspective, they're only aware of the demand they're aware of. We're
That's
scraping
right.
from millions
right,
and millions of company websites directly, also from the big job boards. We dedupe it all. So it's just a bigger data set to make more informed decisions
Which is
against.
great. Which is absolutely
Yeah.
great. Let me ask, because there has been products in the past that have been supply and demand, but I love
Sure.
the three prong of basically mixing in cost or comp into this. What's the workflow for people so we understand the market that you're going after? Do they need to see this in their ATS, or is
Yeah,
it
so-
standalone? Like where do they see this data?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different scenarios, right? So if you think about something like hiring analysis, some of that can happen externally where I'm looking at the availability of talent in a market
Right.
and really thinking strategically, where should I go? But you're right, William. I mean, like the logical place you'd eventually want to see that stuff is inside your ATS or CRM. We're starting to explore those relationships. If you weren't aware, we were previously held by Gartner for a long, long time. We broke away about a year and a half ago now. Gartner, because they're Gartner, didn't
Yeah.
typically engage in a lot of those partner kind of relationships.
Right. They're not.
So we're starting that journey now.
Yeah.
We actually just built a relationship with Beamery
Yeah.
that will specifically allow you to take some of our data, not all of it, but relevant pieces around like talent supply, demand, hiring difficulty, and bring that into the
that's
talent
cool.
calibration process
Right.
directly inside the Beamery interface. And now we're exploring really other interesting things we could do together to even look at like competitiveness, who the competitors are in the space, location optionality, and things like that to try to embed some of that intelligence into your calibration and decision-making process at the point of building out the rec. So we're starting that journey, I would say, William, and I think that's the right way to think about it. For other things like competitive analysis, general skills analysis of a market or a role, things like location analysis as I'm planning where my next center of excellence will be or my next office or my next factory. Many of those are standalone sort of planning decisions which can exist outside the flow of a typical HRIS.
Right.
But that said, we are exploring additional partnerships, folks like One Model, Workday, trying to figure out how our data and where our data fits in their back-end data structures.
Who are you selling to in the organizations? Are we selling to talent leaders? Are we at the CHRO level? Where exactly are we?
Yeah, it's varied. So CHROs for sure, heads of TA, regional heads of TA if the company's big enough. Many of our clients are. It might also be head of people analytics, head of talent intelligence. It could potentially be someone in charge of digital transformation or business transformation who's looking at this data set as a supporting data play in making those decisions, right? But that's pretty much the universe in which we're typically operating.
I'm gonna add probably the COO and the
Sometimes.
CFO
Yep.
at some
Yep.
point because the COO is usually in charge of that next plant and stability, and the CFO
Yeah, exactly.
cares deeply about cost.
Occasionally,
So-
it might be someone in charge of location planning for
Yep.
that same reason.
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
they
yeah.
want, they have rental data, they have,
Right.
governmental
But
regulatory
they don't have
data,
talent data.
but they don't know. And I
No.
can't tell you how many times people have come to us after they put a plant somewhere.
How do
You're
I
like,
hire people?
Yeah, great. It was really cost effective to build there, but I can't staff
No,
it.
Yeah.
So
you,
now
you,
what?
you, you got really
Yeah.
cheap property, and that's fantastic.
Yeah,
You have no
exactly.
talent.
We have we've got not too far from me, David. We've got it's out in farmland, like
Okay.
close enough that it's commutable, but not really But there's some big healthcare companies out there,
Oh yeah,
and they
Sure.
can't staff it. They just can't staff it because coming from either direction,
because they
They're
didn't
going-
use Talent Neuron. That's
Exa- yeah,
why.
yeah,
right?
you're going through cities to get to the farmland,
Yeah.
and it's too much of a commute on the way back and in. It's
Yep.
it's ridiculous, and I don't think they actually planned for that. They
Right.
just said, cheap, we're getting
Yeah.
incentives,
Yep.
big facility, we can do this,
Yep.
and that's it.
Well, I'll
Yeah, it
tell
only
you.
takes a few of those before someone says, "Hey, maybe we should look at talent next time."
Yeah.
Well, there's a guy in Dallas that I've known for a long time, and that's what he does for like Whole Foods. Is he does site planning.
Yeah.
He does this for several big companies and grocery, retail, all of the hourly
difficult.
stuff. They need to know where to
Yep.
put their next little place. Like
Yeah.
but they've got ways to do the demographics of the buyer and all that stuff. They've got some tools that do all that stuff. They don't have talent.
Right. And I think what gets really interesting about that, William, is like if you know some of the demographics of the area, you might think you know. But here's where things get hairy. Who else is hiring for that same talent?
That's right.
Right. And one of the things that we do in our competitive module is it's not just go identify your known obvious competitors who are your
Right.
business competitors,
Right.
but at a role level,
Yeah.
who else is posting for the same kind of talent in the same locations you are? So
That
who are your
that gets-
talent competitors?
Yeah, that
right?
gets messy in the hourly market
Yeah.
because the person
Bingo.
that's applying to Walmart is also applying to AT&T and Taco
Yep.
Bell
Right.
and Starbucks.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
not like they're only applying to fast
And then
food
an Amazon
restaurants.
fulfillment center pops in, and they
Forget it,
kills
you're done.
everybody, right? Yeah, yeah, it's so true, right? I mean, I was working at Healthcare Source for a while, and we were supporting like things like long-term care facilities and
Yeah.
with talent strategies, nursing homes, assisted living, and God forbid an Amazon fulfillment center opened up nearby or a UPS. All those people are getting paid $13 an hour to be a CNA can now be a $17 an hour factory worker, and it would just pull the lifeblood out of the company, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm here, I can actually see all that. Like
Right.
for any company, I can see who else are you fighting for the same kind of talent and what's that competitive concentration and the drain that it's putting on your location strategy, right? It's fascinating what you can do now.
Where do you find most companies are struggling at this level? So they're complex enough that they need you, right? They're
Yep.
large enough that they know they need you. They bring you in. Are they struggle once they get the information? What's that next step for them? Are you recommending? Are you helping them at that point? They're on their own. Where are they struggling?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. I'll start with like the shifting nature of what people are trying to solve for, which is fascinating to me. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we're bridging that gap, Ryan, because it's not even as sophisticated as the clients are that we support, they still need help sometimes figuring out what to
100%.
do with
Yeah.
the analysis, right? So the first thing I'll share with you guys that I think is crazy, and I guess not unexpected, with all the changes that the world's been through over the last like 5 years, right? Like global pandemic, war, like, you
Yeah,
know,
little-
recession,
little
bounce back
stuff.
from recession, supply
Yeah.
chain disruption. Oh my God, AI, everybody. Let's do AI. Right.
Social revolution.
Social unrest,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Just a few things, right?
Minor
that
stuff.
causes
Minor stuff.
things, right? So everybody and their brothers now like, hey, where are we today relative to where we need to be? And where are we relative to where the competitors are and where the market is? So there is a very, very high level of scrutiny right now among a pretty high percentage of our clients and prospects coming in to understand what talent and skills do I have now and where the hell are they in the world? And
Right.
what talent and skills do I need to get where I'm trying to go? And how far off am I? And depending on how far off I am I going to build it? Am I going to buy it? Am I going to automate it away? And if I am going to buy it, where am I buying it? And where can I find it? And at what cost?
And then
Right.
the FOMO that's running parallel to that is what the hell is everybody else doing?
Bingo.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, what are my competitors doing around AI Where are they putting those skills? Where are they hiring for those skills? How are they thinking about this problem? And am I thinking about it the right? Where am I relative to them? And that's just one small example. Like you could say the same thing about other critical roles, right? So that's been a big shifting nature of asks in the last year or so, Ryan.
Hmm.
But then the follow on is like, okay, great. So now we've done this analysis. We know what your gap is. Here's the percentage of this role that's going to be automated. Here's the percentage of this role that you can find easily in the market, but this other part you would have build. So then it's the whole, well, what's your build buy strategy?
Mm-hmm.
How should you be thinking about internal mobility? How should you be implementing? And, sometimes it's silly things. Like we were dealing with one of our clients who was looking for marketers. And one of the constraints they were putting on it was, well, they need to have B2B experience. Right? Which,
Because that's super relevant.
We were able to show them, if you take that B2B skill set off the table and that B2B experience, your available talent pool triples.
Right.
And then why don't you just put a little training program together about what's different between B2C and B2B?
Yeah.
And then you just opened up 3x the talent available to you, and then you can train them on the gap, right? But that kind of think hybrid, think, blended. Don't just think TA, don't just think talent development. How are you going to bring these things together to build the talent that you need for the future? We're providing a lot of strategic consulting and support for that as a separate function. So we run it all through our normal, platform, but then we can engage in specific strategic consulting engagements to support clients in that way. We can also, Ryan, do like research projects like Bespoke. So I mentioned we're in 40 countries. If you want to report on Bolivia, that's not in the platform, but our research team can go and do that for you. Or discover manufacturing talent in Bangladesh, for example, right? And then build out a report of talent availability and that type of thing. Typically, we include a certain number of reports in your contract so that you can go beyond what's natively in the platform and do secondary and tertiary analysis with support from our research team as well.
I want to ask a couple of buy-side questions real quick.
Yeah.
We'll start off with your most recent favorite customer story without disclosing names. We don't need to know their name, but like something there was before Talent Neuron and after Talent Neuron. And so what story do you got for us?
Actually, I think one of the best ones is the one I started to relate, which was one of our clients was really at an impasse about their inability to hire a sufficient number of marketing folks, given the geographies in which they were operating. And we were able to show them with data what was available in the market, why it was so constrained, why the nature of their approach to the problem was the root cause of the problem.
It wasn't just throwing money at it.
Right. Like how about think differently?
Yeah.
Right? You're spending this amount of money on recruiting to go get these very specialized people, when if you choose to get less specialized people, you open your talent supply, and then you can use those same dollars you were spending there on a training program. Right. And now you're not like solving that problem at a point in time through Herculean effort. You're building capability, and you're building a deep systemic ability to be successful over time by fundamentally changing the dynamics of the problem. And that's only possible when you have the visibility into that external data and the way that external data is interacting with your strategy to drive the outcome that was happening, right? So that's a super simple example, but other ones that I think are really interesting are all the stuff we're doing lately with internal skill like identification versus external mobility and recommendations on build versus buy. But even some of those basic things are still really useful to companies as they're trying to sort through just how to be successful in a very difficult, challenging labor market.
So I don't know if you can answer this. I want to put it out there.
Nice.
Because you're here, last year, right? The year?
I came in October. So
in October? Okay. So we remember Talent Neuron from a long time back.
Yeah.
What's that evolution look like? So somebody like me, for example, or that, I was in corporate at the time, long time ago. I have a vision of what Talent Neuron was or what the capability was. What is that? I mean, with there's obvious changes and evolution that happened. But what are those big changes through the last, 6, 7, 8 years that people need to be aware of?
Wow, that's a great question. So I guess the first thing I'd say is we're way easier to do business with than we were before. In the past, the only way we sold was as the full platform.
Right.
Yeah.
You had to buy regions of country data at a pop. We didn't have a strategic consulting arm in the way we do today. So we've broken a lot of that apart, Ryan. So now we broke it into modules. So there's a hiring analysis module, there's a location analysis module, there's a skills analysis module, right? So we're allowing people to sort of buy in against the key problems they're currently facing and the specifics of what they're solving for, which has brought the average price point down pretty considerably to make it more accessible more to mid-market or large mid-market players, but also, frankly, to find cost advantage even among large players who were previously getting charged for the whole dang platform,
And not
but we're only using. So we've price adjusted a lot of people to get them to something that is reasonable and makes sense for their usage pattern, right? We also changed from a very heavy dependence license-wise on your license or price-wise on your licenses. We've minimized that so that people can more democratize access and make it more widely available in the business. So it's more priced now by the module and by the country coverage. The actual cost per license, we want to minimize that so people can spread that out a lot, right? And then the last thing was going from like global or very regional coverages to mix and match specific countries, because each business is different. They're in different parts of the world. It was too limiting. So that's a massive change in the whole go-to-market, which has made us able to better tailor what people have bought against their actual needs, right? The other big thing is the availability of strategic consulting. So previously that was sort of handled when we were under Gartner by the Gartner analyst team. When we separated, there really wasn't anything that sort of filled that gap of like, okay, I got all this analysis, what do I do? Or how do I teach my team to be better data storytellers or to better communicate HR and talent issues through data? Like we can do that kind of consulting too, because that's what we live and breathe every day. Or we could take you through a whole build buy analysis globally for a region, for a location, for a role, for a set of roles, for a job family. So we can go really, really big or pretty narrow to specific things. And then I think the last thing I'd say that's another major shift is, I think that we saw opportunities when we separated to really double down on our global data coverage. We were in a lot of countries before. We weren't as diligent maybe as we should have been about having all three of those pillars, the supply, demand, and salary in all those locations. We've put a massive effort forth this year to make sure that across all 40 countries, not only do we have all three of those data points, but they're refreshed and updated and have a recency to them. India, for example, we've updated salary there 3 times this year because there's wage inflation going on. And so what we had 6 months ago is inaccurate today, right? And so we're taking a much more proactive approach to data freshness and ensuring that what's there is like up to date, right? So those are probably the biggest changes. What you're going to see next year is we're starting to really double down in that universe of strategic workforce planning, scenario driven stuff, what if analysis, really
Sandbox.
Getting serious. More playful kind of things that allow you to take in internal data with external data and then model some stuff to see what's my best path forward.
Finance will love that, especially in the M&A folks. They'll love that because then they have a sandbox. They can then look at that and see what they have.
Well, I think what's happening, William, is I think companies are, 15 years ago when some of this technology first really started emerging at scale, people were in awe. Like, what do you mean I can get salary posts for 20 countries in the world all at once and analyze that and see what that means and use AI to distill signal from what is otherwise just an unstructured job post, right? I think people were just amazed that you could do any of that, right? But now, as we've gotten more sophisticated with data, as large language models have come out, people are asking way more sophisticated questions. Like, hey, based on signal and what you see my competitors hiring for, and what job titles and what skills and where in the world, and what's the difference in the new hiring rate versus their previous organic rate? Is that something I should pay attention to? Can you just tell me, if I give you a list of competitors, who were making moves that I should be interested in diagnosing, right? That's kind of the next level of this stuff, is turning this stuff into insights and triggers and actionable moments where someone can go, oh, wait a second, what's going on there? And across the board, that's where we're moving now. And that's where the space is starting to move, is to move beyond just having the data to really making sense of it and deriving insights from it,
So for the audience's edification, what do we call ourselves? You might have already said it, but I want to make sure.
You mean the company name?
Yeah, no,
Talent Neuron.
I got
it. That was fantastic.
I love that.
That's going to be the opener to the, what do we call ourselves? Talent Neuron.
Thanks. I scheduled the show. I'm pretty much like, no, the
drops mic, walks off stage
category, because it could be a hiring intelligence, could be talent intelligence.
Sure.
What's the category ish? Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. I think the broad category has been called talent intelligence. I think that's candidly, I think, William, that's not the best term for the space, right? Because I think Vizier or, Cruncher or, HR Workbench, I mean, they're all doing talent intelligence too, but it's inside your company data, right? So I think it's some combination of like external talent intelligence or market talent intelligence, it's something along those lines. I think would you go as niche as hiring intelligence? I don't think so, because I think some of what we're opining on is when not to hire,
right?
And when you should build, or when you should automate, or buy.
The reason I asked the question wasn't just to learn the company name, was the what questions, if they haven't bought this before, let's say it's talent intelligence, keep it simple for the audience.
Sure.
What questions should they be asking in the buying process? Because like you mentioned things like data recency and things like that. Like what should they be asking? Because let's say they've never bought this.
Yeah.
What should they be asking?
At the root, I think the interesting thing about the space is like there's sort of two root things that both have to be good to have a good solution. One is data quality, right? So really understanding, where is this data coming from? Per my comments earlier, listen, I like LinkedIn. It's a great solution, but it's all self-reported, right? So if you're looking for statistically valid, defensible data, it's a little sketch, right? So making sure that people are pulling in governmental sources, NGOs, trade unions, banging that up against a dedupe model, and that you have really deep statistical analysis and AI tools to get all that right, so that when you do say something about something, that you have high degrees of confidence in it, or at least as high as you can. The other thing I'd say related to that, William, that is also really important is you want a vendor who's transparent about what they know and don't know. Right? There are places in the world where we can't get that same level of data quality, not because for want of trying on our part, because it doesn't exist. There isn't an NGO, there isn't a governmental entity. We're doing the research ourselves and compiling it, and then basing it on surveys in some cases, right? That has less statistical, certainty than when we can cross-validate it against 5 other sources, right? And so we're very open about that and transparent, because at the end of the day, our clients are making multi-million-dollar decisions on these data points, and you don't want them to make a decision on something with it's we are falsely implying a level of precision or quality that may not be present. We at least want them to know with eyes open what they're basing these decisions on, right? Which then in some cases leads them to do secondary checks or tertiary checks and makes them do additional diligence rather than just rely on us, right? So I think all of that is really important. And I think the second thing that's really, really important is, what then can I do with the data? What insights can I derive? How do I use that data successfully? Is it easy to access? Is it easy to make sense of? Can I manipulate it in different ways? And then I think if there's a third thing, the third thing would be, given that a lot of companies are still beginning to develop maturity in this area, can I get an assist? Per Ryan's comment earlier, can you guys help me when I'm stuck, or I need extra hands, or I'm timeline constrained, or they're looking for analysis that I can't complete on my own. It's too much. Like, can the vendor step in and help you with that in a way that once they're done, they hand it over to you and you can continue on your own, and you haven't then manufactured a dependence forever on a third-party consultancy, right?
Where in the conversation or demo and the sales process do you find that prospects get to this point in that demo, and they're just like, yes, this is it. This is the solution.
The aha moment.
Yeah.
The aha moment.
I think when I've seen the lights go on is when you can take somebody from that first question that they ask and then chain them 3 levels deep to 3 other things they never thought to ask that'll be critical to their success.
Right.
So as an example, the thing that we're hearing is everywhere, as I'm sure you guys are hearing it everywhere. How do I find AI talent? Where do I find AI talent? How should I pay for it? What are my competitors doing? So we can start with, here's what's going on with your competitors. Here's where they're hiring this talent. These are the kind of skills they're looking for. These are the tools that they're looking for, which is also super interesting to folks usually, right? Where in the world are they doing that? Which then leads to, okay, if that's where that's happening, what skills should I be looking for in those areas? What skills exist in those areas? And from a location standpoint, am I present there? What skills am I looking for? Am I looking for those same skills? So now we're branching from what are my competitors doing to what am I currently doing?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we go, okay, great. I definitely want to hire those skills in Bangalore. Who else is hiring in Bangalore right now? And now with our latest launch of our new module, our employee value proposition module, we can even tell you in Bangalore for an AI role, what are the EVPs that they're pitching?
Oh, cool.
Right. So now I can go from this very high level of what's going on competitively down to what's in the job posts in Bangalore for an AI engineer for my 3 main talent competitors in that location. And how does my EVP stack up? And from there, I can even drill into the specific examples in the job posts and see the specific job posts. So Ryan, that's when people's, they have the click. They're like, whoa, I can go from like this global competitive view all the way down to the specific job post that collectively informed all or
they forgot the original question.
Yeah, because now we're answering, because now we're answering, well, okay, because your real question isn't what are my competitors doing? It's going to be how do I outcompete my competitors for those same talents?
Right.
And so we can show them like, what you're really asking is this, so let's tell you how to get there. And then we can show them that whole path through the different modules and how they interconnect to deliver that kind of insight, right? That's usually when people go, whoa, okay, I got it now.
So last question for me is, what's success for you for the rest of the year? Like, what do you want to be by 25, and then maybe by this time next year? Like, where are we trying to be?
Yeah. So right now we're in the midst of launching our first generative AI chatbot, which is super exciting. It's in closed beta with clients. It'll be launched general availability by end of year. That's basically like a chat GPT type of interface. We've been really thoughtful about the design. It's no IPs going out publicly. There's no ability for it to hallucinate in the way it's been built. But it basically allows you to interrogate the system, but with a very natural chat GPT type of experience, right? So that's pretty cool. We're excited to get that launched. We're also launching a candidate profile capability where once you've done your hiring analysis and we've set up where in the world is the right place for you to go find data engineers, for example, and we say, okay, it's Bangalore or it's, Seattle. And we can say, well, who in Seattle is available? What's that talent pool look like? And even begin to surface names for you to then add to a sourcing tool or something along those lines. So we're moving beyond just the pure analysis to closer to actionability, right? And that's the second thing I'd say, William, is over time, what you're going to see from us is we're going to be making that move from just having the data to making it much more actionable, scenario driven, what if driven. A big thing we're going to do next year is really double down on our competitive intelligence module. It's already pretty robust, but we think we can do things like expose what tools people are hiring for, which could be really interesting to CTOs and CIOs. Now that so many countries and so many states are now starting to publish salary data in job posts, we think we can do things where we could expose maybe not what they're really paying, but what they say they're going to pay. So you can compare that to what you say you're going to pay, and then combine that with our EVP data and even tell you, well, bonus is also part of that. RSUs are part of that. They have a pet insurance benefit. Like we can give you like that whole nuanced picture, not of what they're generally doing, but what they did yesterday.
Right.
Like what did your competitor put in a job post yesterday, right? So we think some of that will be really interesting competitively. So that's what you're going to see from us is really kind of more making sense of the data and delivering more actionable insights and allowing for more scenario-driven planning and that type of thing.
So two things from me. Pet insurance, again, has come up. David, like every other episode, pet insurance is coming up.
Really? Oh my gosh.
And this started back a couple years ago. We were doing a live show, and the first guest was Nationwide, and it was pet insurance.
Hmm?
I didn't know what to talk. I was like, you got
Ryan's
this,
head,
brother.
Ryan's head almost exploded
Like,
because the lady sat down, she pushed her cart over, and she goes, "I'd really like to talk about pet insurance." I'm like, "All right, let's go. Sounds fun.
Not
Let's
sure how
do
we're doing this, but let's.
I looked at Ryan and I thought he like had an aneurysm. Like he's like,
I understand the value. I get it, but I'm like an hour on pet. Like, how are we going to
That's
do?
a long time.
Yeah.
Did you do it? Were you successful? You made it.
100%.
He can talk about anything. He can talk about the paint on your wall and take you down. Yeah, no, it was
fantastic.
All right, final question for me, David, is how far out is Talent Neuron thinking? What are you planning for? Are you looking just next year and a year after? I mean, are you 10 years down the line? Where are you guys at in terms of planning, and how far out do you think?
Yeah, so I personally think in 3-year increments. I think candidly much beyond that is the world's going to change too much.
Yeah.
And the CEO shares my worldview about that. So, the way I would describe it, Ryan, is like in the next 6 months, we have very clear, very well laid out plans with clear milestones, timelines, etc. Yeah. The next 6-month chunk is typically very directionally on point, and we know the sort of the shape of it. After that, we sort of move to the next year, right? And that year is sort of a directional, like, let's plant a flag here. This might mean M&A. This might mean organic build.
Right.
These are the kind of partnerships we'd want to chase, right?
Yeah. It gets fuzzier.
It gets a little fuzzier, but like, the North Star for us is this notion of making things actionable and more intelligent in the actual display of the information and the insights it delivers.
Yeah.
So you will continue to see us make more and more sense of the data we have, but also layer in other data points that would increase the level of contextual understanding and insight that you can derive from the data. So that's the North Star. There will be specific jukes and weaves we'll make along the way, but we will be breaking out of just being a pure talent intelligence, here's some data, into a much more actionable place, really for the next 6 months and beyond.
Drops mic, walks off stage. David, so great to talk to you.
You too.
We should have had more discussions over the years because I get smarter every time I talk to you. So just thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for educating the audience, and good luck to everything you're doing with Talent Neuron.